Hi, I'm Sally Thibault.
Hello, I'm Kris Barrett.
And welcome to the Autism Parent Training video series. In this video today, we're going to be talking about the school experience. Kris and I have both had very different school experiences, or I should say our children have had very different schooling experiences. And I thought we would do a video on that and explain how we coped or what we did to manage the very different experiences. So I'll throw to you, Kris, first.
Yep.
Your experience and Tim's experience in the school. Classroom.
And I love this. You'll see a theme in these videos. Sally and I have had very different journeys, but ended up at the same place. So which hopefully is, comforting to know that, just because you're taking a different path. So the very big stress for us was when Tim needed to start school. He still wasn't toilet trained. And we were right on that middle ground of, does he go to special school or do we try and put him in a mainstream school? And that's a really, really stressful decision to make. And it took a lot of soul searching. It also took a lot of visiting schools. So my advice to you, if you're in a similar situation, would be just trust your gut. I went to a few schools that should have been great, that had this reputation for being great for kids on the spectrum, and just the vibe I got from them, we should be able to look after your child, Mrs. Barrett. Like, I don't want someone that should be able to look after my child. At the time, I was working with an amazing therapist, and she said to me, Kris, just let's see what he can do. Let's put him in the mainstream. Nothing's forever. If he goes into mainstream and needs to go back to a special school, so be it. Vice versa. If they're in a special school and they can transition to mainstream, that's great as well. So I went to my local, we looked at private schools for Tim at that point. I went to my local state school where my daughter was going, and they welcomed me with open arms and said, Kris, we would love to have Tim here. And that for me was like, okay, that's where I want him to be. Now, we had the most amazing experience all through primary school at that state school. We actually got more help than we needed. Now, I'm not saying it was smooth, because I would get phone calls and I'd see the school's number and I'd pick it up. Oh, what's he done? Oh, just Mrs. Barrett, come and see us after school. Just come in early today. So I'm not sort of pretending that everything was happy and rosy, but he thrived there with the mainstream kids, learning from them with a lot of support in those early years, support that we tapered off. We then were in the same position then transitioning to high school. It's like, oh my gosh. And so we had to go through the whole thing again. What do we do for high school? He ended up then going to the private system for high school, where we, again, that was the right attitude, that beautiful, caring, nurturing space where he thrived, where they were actually, able to do things differently for him. I got called in year 7. I said, Kris, Tim knows more history than me and than any other history teacher, but when he tries to write it, we can't mark him because his writing is just so bad. We're going to let him do his exams verbally. We're going to ask him the questions. He's going to tell us. They were just so supportive. Now, I spent a lot of time, both primary and high school, communicating, telling them what we needed, being really open, asking them for feedback. What can I do to make your day with Tim better? And I honestly think, regardless of where your child is at school, if you can see the teacher as being on the same team, as you're a team, and both of you, if you're working together, you're going to have a really good outcome. So regardless of where your child is, now you're going to have some teachers in some years that the teachers aren't very cooperative and you're not going to have as good a year. But overall, and, again, you can read that in my book when I had to call the deputy principal every single night for 8 months. But anyway, that all got resolved when I had to be a squeaky wheel. But overall, I would say my biggest tip, and the reason that we had such a really good nurturing time at school for Tim was that I really worked with the teachers and was in a constant communication, and anything I could do to make their life easier also made my life easier. And then you put it all together and it's a really nice. Now, Sally had a really different experience with school.
Yeah, we did. So like Kris, in primary school, we were very, very fortunate to have a wonderful special needs teacher. She was just brilliant and became a very good friend. And she actually coming to David's 21st birthday. She was absolutely amazing. And again, as Kris just alluded to, some years were better than others. It just depended on which teacher you got. I was always at the school, always at the school. Phone calls, and this is the days before email, of course. So it was letters in the diary. Bearing in mind, we didn't have David's diagnosis until he was going into year 7, which at that stage was primary school here in Queensland. So no one quite knew what we were dealing with. I didn't even know. They didn't know. But, as I said, there were some years were just absolutely brilliant. We had wonderful teachers, particularly year 2 and particularly year 7, brilliant teachers. But there were years where it was not so bad and the years were terrible. There was some year, and I remember, in fact, one year, the worst year we ever had was the year I went and saw them about the teacher I thought he should have. They had him with another teacher, and I went and said, no, I really want this one, because I'd heard all these teachers, all these parents, he had the worst year with that teacher. I should have listened to them. I go back on that time, and just as Kris said, come to this as a team with your teachers. It's difficult. And I know for many years I worked helping teachers and healthcare providers to understand the challenges that families living with autism going through, and that when the mother or the father or both are continually called up to the school, you don't know what's going on at home. Yeah. You have no idea how little sleep they've had. You've no idea whether there's been support. And those are the issues I think someone's got to really navigate around, and also share, like, I'm really struggling today. I've been up all night, or my middle daughter is really struggling. To be really honest, that you're going through. So with David, primary school was hit and miss. But as I said, we had a diagnosis by the time he was ready to go to high school. So then our journey was to find a high school. And again, this was many years ago, and there wasn't the funding there was around today. We went to a couple of different schools who just did not have the capabilities to help him. We found a small little school, and they tried, but it wasn't the right place when it was a brand new school. And I think that probably, in hindsight, wouldn't do that again. I wouldn't put him in a brand new school while they're trying to figure out who they are. So we ended up pulling him out of school, as I said in one of the other videos, in the beginning of year 10. And I had a very supportive principal who literally said, look, I know what you need to do and I'll support you. So he kept him enrolled, which meant that the education department didn't come looking for us. But we actually found the alternatives, and the alternative was fantastic for him. He went through TAFE. He did his year 10 literacy and numeracy program through TAFE, which was only 3 days a week and very limited. And they were absolutely, I still call them angels to this day. They were just wonderful in helping they wanted to understand him. I remember them calling me one day and said, look, could you come and have a chat with us? And my first thought was, oh no, here we go. We've just got him somewhere that he seems to be doing okay. But their issue was they were doing an assignment, and they had on the children's statistics, and they couldn't get him engaged. So they wanted to know what he was really passionate about at the time. And there was a new show on, Big Brother, of course, has probably done its dash now, but it was very big in those days when he went. And when I said, look at Big Brother, that stupid show, Big Brother, they went, oh, that's brilliant. All the kids here involved love Big Brother. So he was able to do his assignment based on asking people about their habits of watching Brother. He designed it himself. He absolutely loved it. And of course it was, I didn't even have to help with him. So there was a real lesson in there that our children can be very engaged if it's something they're interested in. Yeah. And that was probably the biggest challenge that we found with the school system, was they wouldn't bend at all at that time to allow him. And he just wasn't interested in some of the books. He just wasn't interested in, and I don't like reading fiction. I prefer nonfiction books and biographies. He's exactly the same. So, and what we discovered was also that he was much better off if he could see a movie or a show and then read a book about it. He could relate much better. And so I remember he wouldn't read one book. It was called Bridge to Terabithia. Oh, with so much drama over reading that book. Now there's a movie on it. Would have made it so much easier.
Makes you sob.
Oh, And then he loved animals. So I bought in there was 22 books in the series of this series of animals. I used to have to go in at night and pull that book out of his hand. There was nothing wrong with this child's reading ability. And to this day, he is actually a brilliant reader. He reads a lot of politics, a lot of local history. He can debate with you on any political issue because he reads deeply into all sorts of policy. And currently now he's writing his own book. So, it's about finding what they're interested in and then supporting them in that, but rather than trying to fit into a curriculum that, quite honestly, really, but the beauty I love about both Tim and David, what they're passionate about and what they're interested in, they will research to the nth degree. David's now a video editor, and he loves that. He loves video. He used to always create stories in his head. And he loves that whole thing about moving tiny little bits of film back and forth until he gets it perfectly and adding, the right music. Kris is laughing because she's watched me. Not my stuff. She's watched me do that too. Yeah. A little bit of ASD in me too. But it's when they find what they're passionate about, and where David works now, they absolutely love him. Absolutely. Like his boss, we met his boss at David's wedding, and his boss said to me, he changed our business. He absolutely, because he had a vision for where this business needed to go, and we weren't there yet, but we listened to him. And he was not the one hanging around the coffee machine chatting in the morning, or the water cooler talking, or, arriving late because he'd had too much to drink. That's not my son. So he was this incredibly reliable employee. But I look back on his school system and with sadness, actually, because now, knowing what I know now, I would have looked for alternatives for him. As if Kris's story was different, but for him, I would have looked for alternatives way faster than what we did. And honestly, really, when I think of the angst we went through with assignments.
And so what does that all boil back to is what we always say. Just trust your gut. And just because a school should be able to do it, or, that it might not be, you can only go so far pushing a square peg into a round hole, and you know your child best. And yes. if you need to look for alternatives, I'm the same, Sally. And I mean, we made it work, but I do wonder there was probably better ways for us as well.
Especially now.
Yeah.
Especially now, I don't think I could have coped homeschooling him just quietly.
No.
No, I don't think so. I'm not that mum. As much as I love teaching, I'm not that mum. We hope that this video has helped. Please click the subscribe button so you're kept up to date when we do a new video, and ring the bell, and please leave us a comment. Ask us a question. Yeah. If you're struggling with someone, we're really happy to answer. We will answer all the comments and share with somebody that might be struggling a little bit, and this video can help them. We'll talk soon.
See you next time.
Bye for now.